Money doesn't get tight by accident. And that's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Because when headlines say money is tight, what they really mean is that someone, somewhere, decided it should be. Quietly, deliberately, and with a straight face. While telling you it's just the economy doing its thing. So, let's start there. Not with charts or jargon, but with a moment you've probably lived through. Prices rising, credit card balances creeping up, job postings quietly disappearing, friends saying they're holding off on big purchases. And then, almost on cue, an official voice appears and says we need to cool things down. Tighten conditions, restore balance, which sounds reasonable, until you realize nobody ever asked you if you were overheating in the first place. And that's why this matters right now. Because over the last few years, money has gone from free to expensive faster than at any point in modern history. And most people were told it was necessary, inevitable, even healthy. But the real story is not about inflation or discipline or responsibility. It's about who actually controls the valves of the financial system and how their incentives don't line up with your daily reality. So let's walk through how this system actually works. Slowly, plainly, without the mythology. At the center is not cash, not banks, not even the government in the way most people imagine, but a small group of central institutions that set the price of money itself. Interest rates, liquidity, and access to credit. And when they raise rates, they're not just adjusting a number on a screen. They are making borrowing harder, refinancing painful, business expansion risky, and layoffs more likely. And they do this by design, because, in their framework, economic pain is a tool, not a failure. Here's the mechanism. In simple terms, cheap money encourages borrowing, spending, and risk-taking. Expensive money discourages all three. When too much money flows too freely, prices rise. Not evenly, but where money goes first. Assets, housing stocks, speculative bets, and eventually everyday goods. So when inflation shows up in grocery aisles, policymakers don't rewind the system that caused it. They pull the brake, hard, knowing full well that the brake doesn't stop prices directly. It stops people, hiring slows, projects die quietly, weaker companies fail, and unemployment ticks up. Because in their model, fewer paychecks means less spending, and less spending means inflation cools, which sounds cold, because it is. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. The system is designed to prefer controlled economic pain over uncontrolled inflation. Even if that pain is unevenly distributed, because inflation scares creditors, bond markets, and institutional capital, in a way, job losses don't. That tells you who the system is built to protect first. Now comes the uncomfortable math. When interest rates rise, governments pay more to service debt, corporations face higher financing costs, and households feel the squeeze immediately. But asset holders, with cash, liquidity, for pricing power often benefit. Higher yields, safer returns, leverage over distressed sellers. And that creates a strange inversion where the same policy meant to stabilize the economy quietly transfers power and opportunity upward, while being framed as neutral or necessary. And the irony is that this tightening is often triggered by excesses that came from earlier. Decisions made by the very same institutions, years of cheap money, asset inflation, and risk encouragement, followed by a sudden moral lecture about restraint, as if the system itself didn't set the table publicly. The narrative is about fighting inflation, restoring confidence, protecting the future. But underneath is a simpler reality. Money is tightened when the people who lend it feel uncomfortable, not when the people who use it feel desperate. And you can see this contrast clearly in markets panic and rates move in days, while wages lag for years. Housing prices inflate quickly and deflate slowly, and job losses are always described as unfortunate side effects rather than central features of the plan, which creates a kind of quiet absurdity where millions of people are told that their struggle is evidence the medicine is working. Zoom out, and the long-term risks become clearer, because repeated cycles of easy money, followed by aggressive tightening, don't just smooth the economy, they reshape it, concentrating assets, discouraging long-term investment, and training entire generations to live with permanent financial anxiety, always waiting for the next tightening cycle, the next warning, the next moment when money becomes scarce again. And the biggest risk isn't even the recessions, it's normalization, the idea that this is just how things work, that money tightness is a natural weather pattern rather than a policy choice, which quietly removes accountability from the people who actually pull the levers. And that brings us to the question that never gets resolved, only deferred. If money can be made loose overnight and tight just as quickly, if entire economies can be cooled by design, then what would the system look like if it were built primarily around stability for people instead of comfort for capital? And more importantly, who would get to decide when money is tight then?